What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Capsule. Very excited for this one. We have a wonderful special guest in the building, Raff from Applause for Thought. We're definitely going to get into more about what Raff does. We met at Move It, and doing the Move It podcast that we produce, there's a wonderful episode that Raff is on. So if you want to hear more from her after this episode, go check that one when it's out, because it won't be out yet. So first of all, just for the people at home, and also Jenny, who's just met you. Also, we have Jenny in the house again, everyone. Can you kind of tell us like what you do, what Applause for Thought does? Just give us a little background.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I will try and be super concise.
No, you're good. We've got all the time in the world.
Okay. So I started life as a dancer. I wanted to be a ballet dancer. As so many people do.
Yeah.
And then I quickly realized that like not only was my physique, my turnout, my feet, all of those classic things that weren't going to mean that I could make a career out of it. It was also, I felt sort of held back in terms of my expression.
Okay.
And so I got into Tring, which is a performing arts boarding school, on a scholarship when I was 14 years old. So I started my professional dance training then. I quickly found contemporary. I found that it was like a really beautiful blend of me being able to express myself in a more fluid, unrigid, explorative way. I'm Italian, I'm very passionate, I gesticulate. And I found that sort of the constraints of like classical dance really defining for me. And so that was all going really well, and that was the path that I wanted to go down. But in 2010, so I would have been 17, I had a huge shoulder injury. I've got a scar from like the top of my shoulder all the way around to under my armpit. I did in total 3 full dislocations and 4 subluxations. And by the last dislocation, I mean, I barely had a shoulder left. And so I had a capsule shrink, branding. I had a capsule shrink and a capsule shift operation. And I basically couldn't dance for over a year. Through that experience, I discovered my voice more. I always wrote a bit of music, played piano, guitar, like dabbled, but had no professional training like with my voice. And found musical theatre. I was not a fan of musicals. My family didn't grow up going to musicals. But yeah, I found it, again, another really cool way of being able to express myself in multiple ways, through my voice, through acting, through dance. I then went on to the London School of Musical Theatre for a year when I was 19, graduated, and then went straight out into professional musical theatre.
Nice.
Had 5 years of pretty much back-to-back work. I was really, really lucky. Of course, I had like tons of rejection and like obviously. But was doing well as a swing and a dance captain and associate assistant choreographer. That was my sort of path. And then seemingly out of nowhere at the end of 2017, I had like a really significant emotional breakdown.
Okay.
I stopped being able to function pretty much on every level. And knowing what I know now about mental health, it definitely wasn't out of nowhere. Like all of the signs have been there throughout my training even, but you know, I'm 31, nearly 32. Back then, like mental health was not spoken about like that at school. And so I took 2018 out of the industry to focus on my recovery. And it was during this time that I started looking at my experience, but also my friends' experiences, my colleagues' experiences, started looking at our industry as a whole. And I was just like overcome with passion. It was like, I knew that I was about to become a mental health activist. Like that much I knew for sure, but I definitely didn't know that I was going to start a company.
Right.
And I definitely didn't know that I was going to sort of eventually stop my career as a performer and sort of be the CEO of this organisation. But yeah, that's eventually what happened. I came up with the idea for Applause for Thought. We launched on the 3rd of February 2019. And gosh, what do we do? Hi. So much. Okay, I'll try and be like. Have you got any thoughts or questions on that so far? Actually,
no. This is. I'm
to keep going.
I'm soaking it all in. This is good.
Okay. So we have 4 main arms of what we do. All born out of our mantra, which is education equals prevention.
Love that.
Like education is not just power, it's a privilege, and it's something that unites us and breaks stigma and raises awareness. And so I know that through my education on mental health, if I'd had that earlier, I would have been able to not prevent myself from going through struggles.
Sure.
Because we have to, that's life.
Yeah.
But I know that I wouldn't have ended up in the hole that I was in if I'd been able to spot those signs earlier, get support earlier. So I know how powerful education is. So that's like everything that it's our mantra basically. The first arm is our support. So we have over 30 therapists and coaches who all offer discounted sessions to people just from coming through Applause for Thought. It's not behind a paywall. We make no money from it. You can go on our website and find any of those people. And then beyond that, every single one of those practitioners has a varying level of experience working with people in the arts.
Right.
So you're not going to get someone who doesn't understand our world at all.
Got you.
Which is like, I think, a barrier to support. The next one is our talks and workshops. So we go into local dance schools, we go into huge organisations, we go into productions. I mean, we deliver about 60 a year. So we've delivered about nearly 400 workshops in our time so far. On everything, like we have, I think it's over like 40 different themes from how sleep affects mental health, nutrition affecting mental health, perfectionism, coping with rejection, building resilience, anxiety, depression, I mean, everything. And then we've got our accredited training. So we've trained just under 2,000 mental health first aiders in our industry, which is,
I have a quick question on that because I saw that on your page. Can you describe what a mental health first aider is?
Yes.
Like somewhat makes sense to me, but also somewhat doesn't.
100%. It's like this sort of meta, like, concept.
I'm imagining someone doing CPR, but
but for mental health. That's good. Just giving you an ice pack and a paracetamol when you're coming to them struggling. No, so a mental health first aider is sort of, if we're taking what we know about a physical first aider, who is someone who is not a therapist, they're not a doctor, they're not a paramedic, but their job is to help in crisis and be that first port of call and know how to safely take those first steps. A mental health first aid is the same. If someone's having a panic attack, which is a mental health emergency, or someone is, if we're talking about the extreme end, I'm sure you'll do some trigger warnings maybe.
Yeah, we can put on the,
just like if someone is, experiencing thoughts of suicide or is displaying suicide behaviour, then that is obviously a mental health emergency. Having the language, tools and skills to be able to navigate that initial conversation and to help them access professional support. So to be calling 999 if someone's obviously on that end of the spectrum, experiencing like a visceral mental health crisis, being able to sort of hold that space before professional help arrives. But I suppose the one difference between a physical first aider and a mental health first aider is that a physical first aider can't sort of go around and preempt an injury. They can't just sort of go around and just like wait with a ice pack in case someone falls over.
You have to be reactive.
Yeah, you've got to be reactive. But a mental health first aider can be proactive. So can spot signs and symptoms. It's not about diagnosing. It's not about telling someone, so by the way, I've noticed this and this, you're bipolar. Anything like that.
Oh God, I have thoughts on that. But
I mean, we'll probably get into all of this. But it's about being able to spot signs and symptoms and be able to open up a conversation about mental health, or being, if your workplace has 10 mental health first aiders, that they are 10 people in the workplace that have had some level of education on mental health. That means that if you ever wanted to talk to someone about it, they might be a good first port of call.
Right.
So that's what.
And is that did you do all 4 strands?
Got one more.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Got one more.
Yeah.
And that's sort of our most evolving, it's how we fund our entire company basically, because our sort of rule of thumb is that anything that's for the individual, we either subsidise or we don't make any money from.
Got you.
But anything that is when we work with organisations, obviously that's how we make.
Is that similar like the talks and stuff like that?
Yeah,
that side
talks
of it?
and also like this last arm, which is our consultancy.
Got you.
So that can look like anything from helping people write wellbeing policies. Like, do you even have a wellbeing policy for your workplace? And if so, how is it actioned? But it also looks like ongoing mental health support. So we do the ongoing mental health support for currently, we've got 4 pending, like 34 West End shows and UK tours.
Amazing.
All musicals and plays. And that's a really exciting opportunity for us to not only support people one-to-one, but also try and work with producers and organisations on creating sort of healthier working environments, which is very hard because we ultimately have no power, but we do what we can to sort of advocate for that. And I suppose all of that together is like the living, breathing example of what our ethos is, which is a top-down and bottom-up approach.
Love that, yeah.
I don't believe that we should be making everyone more resilient. There's a lot of narrative that the younger generation aren't resilient, and I can understand from some perspectives, you know, where they're coming from, and maybe we'll talk about that. It's an interesting topic, but we shouldn't be making people more resilient to cope with a toxic workplace.
Right.
A lot of our I'm putting us in the same generation.
I'm 35, so similar,
same generation is that we did get on with it, but actually, how much should we have got on with it, and how much of
was wrong with
wrong, or how much did that actually build our character necessary for this industry? There's a balance, right?
It's kind of like being like, oh, you're not good enough at dealing with homophobia. It's like, well, the homophobia is the thing that's wrong with this situation, not your ability to deal with it. Like, exactly.
And it's about getting the balance, because obviously we do need to build resilience. And probably so much of what we went through is like vital for how we navigate the industry, right?
And it's not going to be unavoidable. It's like that thing is both. That's why I like the top down and bottom. It's like that thing shouldn't exist or be there, but also it is. So we'll try and fix that, but also in the meantime, you're going to have to deal with it. Like,
exactly, literally exactly that. And then top down is trying to sort of explain that no one is above the law, and that there are laws about how a workplace should be.
Right.
You know, lack of HR. You know, we try to advocate for all the sort of systemic issues like bullying, harassment, like racism, like gender pay gap disparity, like, you know, scheduling, work-life balance, how it's hard to be a parent and be in the industry, all of these things. So the idea is that if we can work from top down and bottom up, then we can somehow meet in the middle, whilst also holding a lot of space for those at the top's mental health as well. Because they get a lot of brunt. There's a lot of them and us, and actually they're holding a lot, and a lot of them are underpaid and overworked as well.
And that trickles down to the environment. Is like, if your boss is, you know, not in a good place, nothing is gonna
exactly. So I think basically at the core, I'm like in love with humans. Like, I just find humans the most incredible creatures. And so everything that we do is just like comes from empathy and trying to understand someone's point of view and be able to sort of help them with the unique tools that they need to get out of that situation.
Right. Love that. Okay, I have so many thoughts and questions. God, it's just like where to start. Okay, so I think it's super interesting, and I love your kind of like. I mean, even we spoke for like, it was like 7 minutes we spoke before her pod, and I was like, I have to get you on the pod because I just like the way you think and stuff. But so, all right, let's start with, I guess, not defining mental health, but like when we talk about mental health or mental illness or anything like that, like, can you maybe give a quick background of like the differences? Or like, for example, if you have like anxiety or stuff like that, I would imagine, and please, like, I'm just going to say my honest like things, and
no judgment.
Feel free to like correct me if I am talking shit. But like, so like, I would imagine that stuff like anxiety and stuff is kind of like mental health issues, but then stuff like being bipolar is almost like a different thing. That's like a mental illness, and they're kind of not the same thing. Am I right in saying that?
100%. So how, I mean, this is how Mental Health First Aid England defines it, and this is, I think, a fantastic explanation for what mental health is that it's basically everything in relation to how we think, feel, and behave.
Oh, okay.
That's what mental health is.
Got you.
Right? And I think when we hear the word mental health, this is why people can say, I don't have mental health. Because when we hear mental health, we assume like mental illness.
Yes.
Right? We actually go straight to the mental ill health or mental illness place, but we never would do that with physical health. Like, we understand and appreciate that physical health is both good and bad. Fluctuates. And
I need to be stronger. I need to be able to have stamina. That's like
it's
normal.
anything in between. And like, I have a cold or I have cancer. There's different. It's all on a scale, and mental health is the same. So, I think that if we look at mental health as a sort of pie chart, like if you've had a bad day or you're nervous about an audition, your pie chart is going to sort of diminish a bit, right? You're going to lose some of those segments. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have mental ill health or a mental health or a mental illness. So I think we need to be really careful. I think there's a popular culture thing of sort of pathologizing or attaching a mental illness diagnosis to normal everyday ups and downs of life. If someone experiences anxiety for an audition or an interview, they don't have anxiety.
It's just
they're experiencing that they feel anxious. But that doesn't mean they have anxiety or have an anxiety disorder, right? So I have 2 anxiety disorders, and you know the way that they were diagnosed. And when we talk, I'll come to bipolar in a second. But that anxiety was present in my life every single day for over 6 months. So I never felt a day in 6 months without feeling anxious about everything, about anything, about leaving the house, about getting on public transport, about every interaction that I have. So when it gets to that stage and your symptoms are so severe that they are affecting the way you think, feel and behave and how you exist in the world, how you have relationships with people, how you show up at work or can't show up at work, that is when you might be in a place to sort of go and get a diagnosis. Mental illness is at the point, that sort of mental ill health moving into mental illness. Mental illness is a place where you can get a diagnosis. And something like bipolar is a diagnosable mental, we wouldn't say...
like a condition?
A condition, exactly. It would be a diagnosable mental health condition. But that person who has that condition, that in the case of bipolar is sort of lifelong, they might experience periods of mental illness, but periods of mental health within that. So they've got their condition, but not every day is going to be with them feeling mentally ill. So even with my, 2 anxiety disorder diagnoses, I have days where I am feeling... I don't have any symptoms and I present like someone who doesn't have the mental health condition, but it's always there. It's sort of, does that...
So I guess, God, this is like, it's so interesting to me, and we don't have 3 hours, but I'd love to have a 3 hour pod with you. We do another one. So what are your thoughts? Let's start here. What are your thoughts on you kind of said it about this like popular culture thing of like, oh, I have anxiety or I have this, and like kind of, like self-diagnosing and treating it like, I don't know, it's maybe a deeper conversation, but like people kind of sometimes wear these things like a badge of honor in a way, or like, I have OCD or I have ADHD or whatever. And then it's like, you come to talk to them and you're like, oh, like you have ADHD. It's like, oh no, like I haven't been diagnosed. I just I'm a bit hyper sometimes, or that type of thing. And like my experience with, not necessarily with mental health, but like I worked with kids that have like autism and stuff in a couple of schools before I was doing all this. And like, I've actually worked with kids that have diagnosed ADHD. So I see I can tell what it looks like when it's actually, a condition. Whereas like some people that are like, oh, I have ADHD. And I'm like, you don't, you're just a bit hyper and it's not easy to concentrate. Or what, I'm being slightly judgmental because I don't know. But yeah, if they haven't been diagnosed, it's kind of like they have this thing where they just call it that thing. But then at the same time, I feel like the flip side of that is like we're making this language or this understanding of these things a bit more open, and everybody kind of knows, like maybe there's a lack of education, but more than when we were kids, people know what ADHD is, what OCD is, what anxiety is. And the fact that they're open to say, I'm anxious today is a great thing. But then being like, I can't do this, I have anxiety. And it's like, you just, like, I teach in unis and like stuff like that. And it's like, sometimes the kids just don't want to dance that day. So they're like, I'm having anxiety. And it's one of those things where as a teacher, I'm like,
you can't say, no, you're not.
Yeah, I can't push back on it because it's like.
Why can't you push back on it?
I don't know how to push back on it. Let's say that. Because it's like, what I would want to say is like, prove it, or, or like, do you know what I mean? Because it's like, they do it with normal injuries as well. This is the thing, like, and this is not only uni, it's just like every class with kids. Anyone that's taught kids will get this. But it's like, they'll be like, oh, I've got a knee injury, I can't join in today. And I'm like, I just saw you like walk in here. It's like, do you have a knee injury or is your knee a bit sore? Like, and it's similar for me, like there's a difference. Because like, again, I used to play basketball, and I worked with like, well, I was never high level, but the guys I played with were like, went on to be high level. And it's like, I know a knee injury when I see it. Like if you got a torn ACL or something, or are you just, your kneecap is a bit bruised? Like, because if so, it's like you could push through that if you really wanted to. If you've torn your ACL or your meniscus, no, you can't like play through that. So then when people are like, oh, I have anxiety, or I'm having something, it's like, I kind of inside my, maybe politically incorrect self is like, are you just feeling a bit nervous because you didn't sleep well last night and you probably could push through and do the class? Or are you actually having like a proper, something that's like, I really can't, and I don't know how to push that without pressing the wrong buttons. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. And I think that like, every teacher, everyone that I speak to at the moment is feeling the same way as you about not knowing when to push people. But I think it's you said so much in there that I don't even know where to start. But let's pick up where we left off there. So I think that someone's diagnosis should be information, not an excuse. It's information, right? I'm disclosing information about myself, to help you support me, and to create, to be honest with you and be open, and that's a really vulnerable, courageous, wonderful thing. But that's not where the conversation should stop, right? So I have these diagnoses. I've had to and I've had the privilege, this is why therapy, this is why education is so important, because I have the privilege of having had that. Yeah. And not everyone has that, that's why that's my biggest goal. But I have had to work the hardest that I've ever worked in my whole life for anything to sort of just behave like a normal human being to get through the day. Yeah. Like it's so hard, but I do that because I want to have the same opportunities. I don't want it to hold me back from my goals and my dreams. I want to have beautiful relationships, and I deserve all of that. I've just been born with a set of circumstances, a brain, whatever you want to sort of say, the reason why mental health even exists in the mental ill health exists in the first place. We won't get into that. But that they're the cards that I've been handed, and therefore ultimately with the right support, with the right teachers, with the right everything, for sure, but my mental health is my responsibility. And so it's about actually exploring what are the barriers. Okay, so you've come to me and you've said, I can't do this today, I've got anxiety. Okay, but what are the barriers? What would help? So even if it's like doing, this is an assessment, this is something that you have to do. What can we do?
You're speaking to like actual real life things that have happened, but
what can we do to make that feel comfortable for you? Because ultimately every workplace by law has to make reasonable adjustments, but reasonable adjustments. Yeah. I see you and I hear that those fears and those anxieties. Where are you on that scale? Is it at 100? I absolutely cannot. But if you're at 80, what can we do?
Yep. And we've had people.
What tools have you? What tools have you got? Yeah. And that. Sorry, whilst this thought is here, can I just keep going?
Yeah, please.
This also then comes back to your original point, which is people even with a diagnosis, right, will come to the self-diagnosing later, but someone has a diagnosis, they've been given it. Have they actually been helped and empowered with the tools to cope? Yeah. Because there's all of these diagnoses being handed out, but there's still a huge waiting list for therapy. So you've got people with diagnoses and maybe who are medicated who actually aren't being given the day-to-day tools to be able to support themselves to push through those moments.
Yeah, 100%.
And have the self-awareness to go, am I at 100? Because I still have days now where I go, absolutely categorically, this day can't happen. Right? This is not working. This cannot happen. But they're rare. Yeah. And actually, I only know that now because I've pushed myself past where I thought I could. Right. Sorry, what was your point?
No, I was just like, especially with the students and stuff like that, it is like, there's people that are like, doing dance classes or dance courses that are like, I can't dance because I have anxiety when I perform. It's like, but you're in a dance like course. So like you said about reasonable adjustment, I think that's the important thing, because it's like this, for an assessment or something, there's so many things we can do to accommodate you, but if you refuse to move, how can I grade you on your dance, or how can I teach you this dance? You know what I mean? And it's like, I think for me, it's a little bit of like the students or the young people kind of being like using these things, like you said, as an excuse. I think there's different categories. Some of them are probably using it as an excuse. Some of them are, like you said, they maybe have a diagnosis, or maybe they're right about their self-diagnosis, but they don't have tools to deal with it. So they just use it as like, well, I'm just not going to do anything, which also is...
Or they're in so much pain that they actually don't understand how.
Right, yeah, they're just like, there's no way I can do this.
They actually don't know how to move past.
Yeah, yeah.
I never sort of, it's actually never my job to sort of, and this is where I check my frame of reference, but it's never my job to sort of decide whether someone is or is not in the pain that they're in.
Yeah, sure.
But it is about questioning how they move past it. And I think that's the key bit, that people don't have the confidence because they're so scared of being cancelled or so scared of saying the wrong thing and making someone upset. When actually, like, we have to move towards the issue. We have to talk about it more.
And I found the other issue is with let's say for me as a teacher, right? And it's not even like my main, like I know people who are full-time teachers who struggle with this way more often than I do, but it's like, it's also the worry of the organization not understanding mental health. Because I'm in the classroom and like I could say, I don't think, like, let's say if we go back to like physical health, it's like, I don't think this person's got a knee injury. And like, I'm like, all right, well, if you're refusing to do the class, you can leave. If you're going to stay, you got to do it. And they're like, oh, but my knees hurt. And I'm like, well, you know, I watched you walk in, I'm watching you walk around now, you're fine, you know. And then somewhat the organization or the university or whatever will kind of go, all right, like we kind of get why you made that decision. You understand the body, physical health, we also do, blah, blah, blah. If I did that same thing for someone's anxiety, my worry is often that the university or the organization will go, oh no, you can't do that because they have anxiety. And I'm like, but did they just tell you that they have anxiety and that's now, you know what I mean? So when I say, well, I asked them to leave because they were refusing to do the class, and then you come to me and say what happened, and then, oh, but she has anxiety, she has to stay. And you know what I mean? And it's this thing of, because you don't understand and you don't, like, you probably some of the work you do, but like, because you don't have policies in place, you don't have training, you don't understand, you just go, don't touch that topic. Yeah. And now the students get away with murder because you're in a way like, it's a good thing because you're putting this umbrella, and maybe there might be 5 out of 10 that are making excuses, but 5 out of 10 that really have some issues. But are you protecting them? Well, because that's my question. Are we?
Because I would say that just having a policy that if someone is anxious, they can sit out of any class they want. I don't think that's caring for them.
Right.
Because that might not be able to happen for them in their later life. And you're not preparing them for the realities of life.
Yep.
But it's also not in a nurturing way by just saying to someone, you can sit out because you have anxiety.
Just give up because you can't do it. Yeah.
Like, that's also not a caring thing. We shouldn't be aiming for that to be the sort of gold standard, that we're working in an environment where if you have anxiety, you get to stop.
Yep.
Because it's about having the resources to, if someone has sat out of class because they're anxious, what's then the next steps? Is there then a welfare check with them from the school or the university? Is there a conversation about, I saw that you sat out of class today, how is your anxiety doing? Has it got worse? Has it got better? What do you need? Like, what supports, what things can we, do you see what I mean? It's like all of those really rich follow-up conversations that aren't happening.
Yeah.
I don't believe, as someone who works in mental health, that sort of letting people sit out just for their anxiety and that being it is caring for mental health.
This is why we love you, Raff.
Personally.
Yeah, no, but I think that's really... Yeah, it's a really well put thing. I mean, like I said, when I was in schools and we were working with the kids that had autism, right? It was like, the point wasn't to be like, you know, like, let's say there's a range, you know, I'd work with like year 7s all the way up to year 11s, and you see the progression of them with, you know, we were in the SEN department, and the schools that I were in had a really good SEN department, special needs special education needs. But the point of it was to work with them to integrate. It wasn't like, oh, you're autistic, this is difficult for you, so nobody talk to him, it's noisy, everyone be quiet, he doesn't like noise. It was never that. I mean, there might be times where it's like, right, this classroom is a bit wild, let's take you out because you're stressed by this. But the point was, let's work with you to make you be able to integrate. Okay, what do we do when it's loud? Like, how do we deal with this? You know, like that type of stuff. And, you know, you see the year 11s that it's like, basically I would have to be, the way it works for people that don't know with like mainstream schools is like, I would be assigned to a class where there was 1 or 2 or 3 people who are like known to the SEN department for different reasons. One might be, have like a partial blindness. One might be autistic. One might have OCD, whatever. Or there might be just one in the class. And I know who those 3 kids or 1 kid are in each class. And with the year 7s, I'd be like sitting next to them, like every step of the way. Okay, are you cool with it? Do you understand this? Blah, blah. By the time we got to the year 11s, and it's a credit to the department, but a lot of the like year 10s and year 11s, I was just in the back of the class chilling. And like, I'm just there in case he needs me. And it's like every now and then, like he'd like whoever it was would like, you know, turn around. I'm like, you good? And they're like, yeah, all good. And it's like, cool. Just tell me if you need me. But the point is like by the 5 years of being in the school, you learn to integrate, and they've already got their go-to, like, okay, if it's loud, they have headphones or, you know, whatever it might be, but you have your tools, with the idea being that like when you leave here, the world is not going to bend to your will every step of the way. As much as it would be lovely in places for the world to bend to you and for you to, you know, for all of us, but it won't. And there's going to be, from best case scenario, the world just won't bend. Worst case scenario, people are going to be mean to you, you know? And it's like, you have to be as prepared as possible to deal with that, of course, with all the support that you can. So I think it's like, this is kind of the thing is like, you know, with these not mental illnesses, but even if they're not conditions, but just like being anxious, even if you don't have anxiety, just being anxious or whatever, it's like the idea is to create tools, like you said, and learn to operate through that, or make the decision to remove yourself or whatever, but as a last resort. But
that's resilience.
Right.
Resilience is not just withstanding any amount of pain, any amount of anxiety, any time. It's about having the self-awareness to go, this is too much.
Yeah.
I'm stepping away.
Yeah.
But I only know that because I've pushed myself all those other times. So I have generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder, which are 2 pretty hideous, well, they're the two of the worst anxiety disorders you can have in terms of just how they affect your life. But I've had lots of different therapy sort of to support myself through that. But one of the things is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And when you're having cognitive behavioral therapy for panic disorder, the therapy is experience the panic. It's called exposure test, exposure therapy. The only way to overcome a fear of panic attacks is to have panic attacks.
Interesting.
And
jump in the cold water.
Sit and tolerate. And it has to be a long, like definitely with medical professional help, like alongside a therapist. And you don't just jump to 100. But basically 2 years ago, I was completely flat bound for 4 months. Couldn't leave my flat. And for 3 weeks, 3 times a week for 3 weeks, I had to go down to the tube and come back up to my house and tolerate the level of anxiety that I felt.
Wow.
So that was something that was maybe on like 3 out of 10 on the scale. You can't just jump to 10 out of 10, right? It's measured.
Yeah.
And then you learn to be in that situation. And then eventually, I mean, look at me now.
Doing great.
Doing the thing. And that, so what you've said, there's science, there's truth.
Right.
And even when someone goes to a mental health professional, to a therapist, like I can only speak to my lived experience of anxiety. Like that's actually how you cope with your anxiety, is by experiencing the anxiety. And so there's so much truth in what you've said, and it directly correlates to mental health.
Right.
And preparing people.
Okay, so my next question or thought is, do you think, well, my view or my experience is that like mental health maintenance, let's call it, whether that be therapy, whether that be, you know, whatever. Yeah. It's so, I mean, we briefly spoke about this at Move It, but like, it's kind of seen as like a luxury or like a last thing. And I was even saying it about myself, and you were like cussing me out immediately, like, what are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, I like you. You got to come on the pod. No, but like, you know, being seen as like a luxury or like something that even, you know, I imagine for these like West End shows or organizations, it's like, you know, we can't put on a show if the dancers have a broken knee or whatever. what we can put on a show if they're anxious, or you know what I mean? And it's like, do we need to spend money on that? And it's like, maybe there isn't, you know, as much of a strict like policy in places for certain things, but it's like, you know, I think there's a lot of gaps in the industry, in everything, stuff I've worked in, even filming wise or whatever, where I'm like, this seems like a mental health loop. Like, I won't say who it was, this is just a small example, but like there was a piece that I filmed and the audience were given a massive trigger warning as they sat down to this next piece, if you need to leave, blah blah. But I'm like, I'm filming this. I haven't been given any choice to do it or not. I have to film this, and I wasn't given, you know, to go to film the piece. They didn't say, oh, by the way, are you cool with it? Because and I was also thinking now, the lighting guy, were they given a trigger warning? Because you said to the audience they can leave. I had to leave, and actually Jenny saved me and filmed it for me. I just, like, she wasn't working, you know, I just gave her the camera. But I was like, I watched like 2 minutes of the tech, and I was like, I can't be in here. And I feel like I have some issues, and we can get into that if that's part of the, if that's natural.
Off camera.
Yeah. No, but I was like, I was saying to Jen on the way here, I was like, I don't want to make this a therapy session for me. But like, I was like, I can't be in here. I'm going to have a panic attack. And I was like, but I feel like that was like a loophole where I was like, I wasn't given a trigger warning for this. And I'm getting paid to stay here. So I'm like, I'm kind of put in a weird situation. But all that to say is like, I feel like it's the last stop on the, like, if you have my first thought was like, you know, the ones that you said that you're the West End shows that you're helping and that you're working in. My first thought is like, oh, they must be the like fancier ones, because I was like, these kind of like mid-level or lower production, anything I've worked on, I'm like, they're not spending money on mental health. Like, that's their last, lucky if they film their stuff properly. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I feel like that's the last thing. And I think even, you know, this is what we briefly spoke about at Move It, but like, even for me, like, basically, to tell the story to Jen and people at home, I was speaking to Raff for like literally like 7 minutes before the pod, and I was talking about therapy, and I was like, I said something to the effect of like, but I can't afford a therapist, and she was like, you know, talk to Applause for Thought and we can help you. And then I caught myself and I was like, I actually can afford therapy, but I don't prioritize my money to pay for therapy. You know what I mean? I'm like, if I got money, I'm like, well, I need to buy camera equipment. I need to travel to do this. I need to, you know, update, you know, my laptop, or all these things that enabled me to work day to day. And I was like, so then after all that, I can't afford therapy. But realistically, if we look at it and we rearrange priorities, I can. And I was saying that like, I would prioritize like investing in my practice. And what Raff said, which I think is brilliant, is she was like, but investing in your mental health is investing in your practice. Like, and that kind of speaks to you taking that year off to just focus on that. Sorry, all this to say, what my kind of question is, or thing that I want your thoughts on, is like this. Do you also agree that that's like a thing in society, that even as individuals we see it as like, oh yeah, and if I'm like really rich, then I'll be like, oh, maybe I'll get therapy. It's not something that we consider. And is there is it also in the setup? Like, therapists are expensive.
Yeah.
So is it also in the setup of like, you know, we have the NHS. I mean, I know you can get therapy. I mean, I went through the NHS route to get therapy and I'm still waiting. But it's like, that seems like a less effective service to get for free. But you know what I mean? And it's like, then if you go private and you pay, it's really expensive. And then for us, we're like, but I'm fine. I kind of, I feel certain things, but I'm fine. It's like a bit of a luxury to invest in your mental well-being, no? Or it's seen that way. Not that it is.
I mean, but I think both things that you said are true.
Right.
Like, they both exist at the same time, is that therapy is a privilege in our country. And there's no two ways about it. Like, the NHS system is not fit for purpose. And that is not by any means putting off anyone going to talk to their GP about how they feel by any stretch. Absolutely do it. But I think that there's also like a missing link with people actually knowing what is available. Like, if you're talking about the arts specifically, like it's not just Applause for Thought, but like, does anyone know about there's resources here? It's about trying to get the word out about that there actually are.
I didn't even know you could go to the GP for this. Like, so my friend who actually, I would love to have Jo Reed. I would love to have Jo on the pod with you, because she's a psychologist, I want to say. I hope I got that right. But she's a therapist as well, but she's a university lecturer. But she is the one that was like, I was telling her about like, oh, I think I have this and I feel like this and blah, blah. She was like, talk to the GP. And I was like, oh, you can go there for that? I was like, I thought it was just health stuff. She's like, no, go to them and they'll refer you.
It is health stuff.
Well, yeah, true. I was like, I thought it was just body stuff, yeah. And she was like, no, yeah, go speak to them and they'll refer you. And I was like, oh, all right, cool. But yeah, anyway, yeah.
But there are low cost options that exist, and I just wish people knew about them more.
Yeah.
So that is true. It is still a privilege. It is underfunded on the NHS. Yeah, all of those things exist. On the sort of point about investment, I think that, again, sort of pop culture around mental health, we've sort of made self-care seem really easy and really trivial. We've sort of painted it as like
go get a facial
and face masks and I don't know, all those things.
Yeah,
and actually, no, it's the messy stuff, like maybe sacrificing, I don't know, a dinner a week to pay for your therapy, because that's actually what you need.
Yeah.
And therapy, again, is messy. It's hard. Therapists aren't allowed to give you any advice, which just feels
Therapists aren't allowed to give advice.
Therapists won't give you any advice.
Interesting.
So they just ask you questions, and it's kind of wild, because you're like, I'm paying you how much? Can't you just tell me how to live my life? Yeah. But it's all about them sort of reflecting things back to you so that you can come to your own sort of conclusions about things. And it is...
what's the one that, this is going to sound a really ignorant question. What's the one where like they tell you about like the type of thing where they're like they tell you about where your things come from, or where your thought, like getting to the root of those type of things?
So that's psychodynamic. Okay. Psychodynamic therapy is when you sort of go more into the past.
That's like when they in the cartoons when they're lying on the sofa and they have a
giving
notepad.
Full Freud.
Yeah.
It's not quite like that anymore, but yeah.
But that's what like
psychodynamic is going back. CBT is all about, I mean, if we're going to talk about different modalities, I don't want to sort of, I'm obviously not a therapist myself, but I don't want to sort of get any of these definitions wrong, but CBT is more based on sort of changing cognitive patterns. Right. So it's more practical based. You focus on the symptoms first and work backwards. And it's about sort of retraining the brain cognitively, behavioral therapy, literally what it says in the title. And then you've got loads of other ones like sort of humanistic, which is more person-centered, sort of led by the person in front of you. There's so many different modalities. And actually, if you go to our website or Instagram, you'll be able to find out loads of information about each of the different therapies, so that people can actually have an idea of what they might want to try. Yeah. Because a lot of people will say, tried therapy once, it didn't work. And I'm like,
I was just about to say that.
Who was it? Yeah. When was it? Yeah. What type of therapy did they have? They were like, don't know, just didn't work. And I'm like, it took me 7 therapists to find my therapist. It's like dating. Like some people find their husband or wife or partner on the first go, and then for some of us, it takes a wee while. And so it's it's the same thing with therapy. But yeah, I think in terms of the investment, it's about changing people's view of actually what self-care is, and actually working on that people maybe don't begrudge their really bougie £200 a month gym membership for Third Space or whatever. Sorry, I don't even know. I'm calling out Third Space.
Yeah. You Third Space.
You Third Space, you expensive, gorgeous gym.
Get Raff a free membership.
It's like, I wouldn't mind one.
Put a therapist in there. Make it worth our while.
But or they'll pay like £90 for a singing lesson, but like could never spend £60-70 on a therapy session. So it's about unpicking that, but like some cold hard evidence from lived experience. When I took my year out, I didn't sing, dance or act for the entire year. I went to no classes. I did nothing to do with the industry. When I decided to come back into the industry in June, I started auditioning in January, but I didn't book something till June. I got to the finals of shows that I've had no's from first rounds for my whole entire career up until that point. I was going up for stuff that I'd never been seen before. How I was auditioning was like, worlds apart. Like worlds apart. Like it did not, I was getting further than I'd ever got before. And I don't think that's coincidence, because my voice was not as tuned. Like I couldn't belt as high, couldn't kick as high. But my confidence, my self-worth, my vibe when I came into a room of like knowing myself got me way more opportunities than before. So I do think that it's about sort of shifting people's priorities and looking what they should, at that. Is there any better investment than investing in yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if it's like you said about people, like I'm one of those people that's like tried therapy once. Not that it put me off therapy, but I did try it once and it didn't work and the woman was no good.
What did you define as not working? I just find that interesting.
Yeah,
What's your measure of success when it comes to therapy?
Well, my thing was like, at first, okay, so I don't mind being open about whatever, but like, it's just, I don't want to make it all about me.
It's not making it about you. You're being vulnerable and sharing your experience for the learning of others.
Thank you guys at home. No, so basically in the pandemic, well, I've always had like, it's becoming more apparent like what it's all about, but it's like anxiety and panic attacks and stuff like that. And in the pandemic, it got really bad. Maybe it was because of lockdown. I don't know. You could probably say better than I can, but maybe lockdown wasn't helping. But I went to a therapist in the lockdown and we did it on Zoom. And when I went to it, it was like, all right, I'd had like multiple panic attacks in a short space of time. I was like, this is getting ridiculous. Like, I don't know the scope of it, how bad they get, but for me, I was like, this is like some of the worst I've had up to that point. And so I was like, I need the therapist now. So when I had it, it was like, we did it once a week and it felt good at the beginning because it was like, I was having regular like panic attacks. And like, so it would be like, on Wednesday, okay, so tell me about your week. Well, I didn't sleep. I slept 30 minutes the other night. I did this. And she's like, okay, cool. Like, talking to me about it, blah, blah, blah. Then I started to feel a bit better, whether or not it was because of those chats. Maybe it's partially because that also just, I think time passed, maybe exposure. I don't know. It started to feel a bit better. Then I was like, okay, I start to admit, like, I think I've got an issue, right? Because this is like ridiculous, this like panic attacks that I've had. And then I guess expectation, and I did try and talk to her about it because my friend, the same friend I was talking about before, she was kind of encouraging me, like, all this stuff that you're complaining about, tell her, like, don't hide it from her. So I was kind of thinking we'd start to now we're out of the storm. Let's get to the root of it or help me to prevent it not happening next time. And I felt like I might be projecting this on her, but like I felt like she just started phoning it in because I wasn't having panic attacks anymore. So it's like we'd have therapy and it would just be like, oh, so tell me about this first thing annoyed me and I told her about it, but it's like she wouldn't even start the conversation by saying anything. She'd be like, hi Luke. And then just that.
It's a common therapeutic, yeah.
And I'm like,
why did you hate it?
Because I'm like, we both know why we're here. You're the expert, I'm not. And like, there's nothing.
Why is she the expert?
Well, that's because isn't that why I'm coming to you? Because I'm like, if I know more than you, I can. Also, this is maybe the thing as well.
She's not the expert on you. Only you can talk about you.
In your face.
Yeah, but
silence is a really interesting tactic. I also can't stand it. It's particularly bad for people with anxiety because I just want to fill that gap.
Yeah.
And my brain is going, why aren't you filling the gap? Do I need to say something?
Yeah.
What do I say? Why aren't you saying? It's absolutely hideous, but it forces us to sit with.
I think also the thing with her, and again, like, please.
But maybe you didn't click.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. But I think it's like, for me, I'm like, I feel like, especially in the arts and the kind of people I'm around, I don't feel like I lack ears, if you know what I mean. Like, if I'm just like, if I just want to call a friend and be like, can I just talk to you? I feel like I've got a list a mile long of people that, even if I don't know them that well, that I could be like, yo, I'm just feeling anxious today. Can I just call you and tell you? Like, I feel like people, I have a lot of close people that would listen, So I'm like, I'm not paying you to be ears because I've got ears. I'm paying you to like, why am I having panic attacks? And this is maybe where it's like, maybe I was looking for the wrong type of thing. And with her,
I think it's a misconception of what therapy is. And I think it comes down to this thing that we see time and time again, which is people come into a therapy session normally when they've waited it to get really bad. Which is firstly so much doubly hard to do the work when you're already really bad. And they go, fix me.
Yeah, that's what I did. Yeah.
And there's a frustration when they can't fix because they're not there to fix. And, arguably the hardest truth I've had to learn, and it has taken me, the penny only dropped for me 6 months ago. So 18 months of panic disorder before the penny actually dropping, which is understanding where my panics come from is not going to stop it. It's information.
Sure.
So I can understand the things of my past, all of these different things are just understanding. But actually, my aim is not to never have panic attacks again, because I'm not scared of panic attacks.
Interesting.
And I can experience them. I don't want them to. By accepting that they come stops them from coming.
This is what I was kind of going to say, is like, doesn't it though?
The aim should never be complete absence of symptoms. It's about being able to build a tolerance that you can withstand. But doesn't the anxiety and that panic?
Doesn't the like understanding the root kind of like start to pull the thread of like, because it's a lot of times it's like, especially maybe the anxiety and stuff like that, it's not a logical thing. Sometimes it is.
No, there's there's actually no logic.
Right, there you go. So it's not like, I'm
in an anxiety disorder, like I'm talking about.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because like, I feel like, when people are like, talk about having a phobia of heights or something, I'm like, I don't know that that's like a phobia, because it's like, if you fall, you're going to die. So it's kind of healthy fear to be scared of, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm at the edge of a cliff, I'm scared, there's something wrong with it. It's like, well you should be.
But that is, sorry, I keep jumping.
No.
It's good stuff. But I suppose that's the difference between a fear and a phobia, because a phobia of that is, a fear of that is rational. Yeah. But if that phobia is so debilitating that person can't
go on a plane or
all of those things, then it's a mental health condition.
Right. But that's kind of what, if you, going back to the logic thing, is like, I feel like if you start to pull the thread of like, I understand why I'm thinking like this, then doesn't it kind of start to alleviate things? Because when you start to panic, you're like, oh yeah, this isn't a logical thing, because I'm thinking this because of the way my childhood was, because of, do you know what I mean? And then you're like, oh, I'm not panicked anymore, because I realize, like, I'm aware of, I'm able to step out and be like, oh, I see what's happening. I'm just thinking these things, or my brain is going haywire. And doesn't that, this is kind of my, when I was going to the therapist, it's like, I want to know why I'm panicking about this stuff, so that when I start to feel panic, I'm like, my brain's just doing that thing again. It's not a real, because that's the part that
you need then you're looking for like a more psychodynamic therapist. Right.
So that's the difference.
So maybe it sounds like she was maybe more CBT or humanistic based. I don't know what she was. So in terms of the first part, which is dealing with the symptoms and the here and now,
that helped.
Very helpful. Yeah. But then you reached a point where that stopped. Yeah. Like, for example, there was a point with me where CBT stopped working. Right. And I've now moved into somatic therapy, so Gestalt, and like a lot of breath work, because I'm actually, a lot of my panic manifests itself physically. And so I have built like a distrust and disconnection from my body. So it's all about coming into my body and feeling my feelings, not talking about how I feel.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
So that's just an interesting journey, but it's totally okay that modality stopped for a bit. In the same way, like, you wouldn't continue doing the same exercises at the gym. Yeah, you have to. Your body gets used to that, and you're like, okay, cool, I'll move on to the next exercise.
And this is where I think I was looking for her to switch it up. And I told her all of this. It's like, I was like, I don't like when you're just silent at the beginning, because would you like? She's like, just say anything, and I'm like, well, I know. Like, also, it's hard to go into detail, like, without, I can maybe skirt around the issue, because I don't want to be too personal, I guess. But like,
only share what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, it's just like I feel like I have anxiety about a specific thing. And potentially like on the extreme end of a specific thing. I know it's that. Like, I don't know much else. I know it's that. That triggers me every time. Every panic attack is about the same thing. Yeah. It's in the same moments. It can, whatever the trigger is, it's always when that subject pops up, right? And I definitely have reasons that I can link, and if I told you, you'd be like, well, yeah, that's definitely contributing, right? So then, and I told her all this. She knows the history, she knows stuff. So then she's like, just say anything. And I'm like, okay, cool, I like shoes. And she's like, oh, well, tell me more. Why do you like shoes? I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, this is not, for me, maybe I'm being really like, not judgmental, but like really blunt about it. But I'm just like, the thing that it's about. Can we focus on either that or my history? And like, let's dig into, shoes is not going to link us back to that. But you've asked me to just say what was on my mind at this moment. And if I'm honest, I was thinking about shoes. So, and then when we're going off, we spend an hour talking about like, okay, so what is it that makes you so, interested in like fashion and stuff? I'm like, what? You're just talking, in my head, I was like, you're just talking to fill the hour to get paid. Like, that's the kind of feeling I started to build up with her.
We are going to advocate that therapy is great.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to come on this book and therapy sucks.
No, just my therapist. No. But this is kind of the reason why I was like, I kind of gave up on it, because I just felt like, you weren't. But then again, it's like what you said. It's like, that's my expectations of that. And maybe I was even looking for a different type of therapy.
Yeah, it sounds like you were challenging each other, but you weren't meeting.
Yeah.
Like, you weren't on the same page.
Yeah.
You weren't I can see I can understand therapeutically maybe what she was trying to do, but you weren't aligned. And
it's like the dating thing you said.
Yeah, you weren't aligned, and it ran its course.
Yeah.
And then you stopped understanding each other, and it stopped working.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
And I think that it's the. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk more about it. I was going to ask you more follow-up questions about, but it's
yeah, and I think to like make it back on a positive about therapy, it's like it didn't make me not want to do therapy, but it made me more like passionate to find the right therapist, if you know what I mean. Because it's like I know what I think I know what I need, if you know what I mean. But I know it exists out there. I just think it wasn't her.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
100%. And I also think that being really open, just like dating, is that sometimes we think we know what we need until we actually get what we need, and we're like, that completely surprised me. Like one of my biggest revelations was that I thought that because I'm emotional. Well, people have always told me I'm emotional, but I think that's also because I'm passionate and Italian, and culturally people don't get that here in the UK. Like no one in Italy thinks I'm emotional. They think I'm stoic as fuck. Because I'm like,
you've been around British people.
I don't share my emotions. Whereas here, everyone's always told me my whole life growing up how emotional I am, and I'm like, I think it's you guys that are the problem.
I mean, British people are very.
You guys are constipated emotionally.
You guys are literally constipated emotionally. But yeah, and so I had that narrative, and I've always been. I can talk, same as you. I've had ears, like I can talk about how I feel. Yeah. And so I was like, right, cool, in therapy. And then I realized that I haven't felt one of my emotions in my whole life up until this point. Right. Because I'm so good at intellectualizing them and talking about them that I don't feel a damn thing. Yeah. And I think that really just showed me that everything I expected from therapy just turned on its head in that moment, and that everything I thought I needed, which was a space to talk about how I feel, actually wasn't. I needed a space to actually feel how I feel. Yeah. And that's way more vulnerable for me. I could tell someone some of my deepest, darkest thoughts and it not affect me at all, but to actually be just silent and vulnerable, emotional with someone would be a lot.
Yeah, I mean, actually, like it reminds me of like when we were in LA, but like I had what I feel like was like not necessarily related to any of the stuff I was talking about, but just like with my personality is like I had this realization a while back that I was like, when I'm feeling down, as soon as I feel down, if I'm around people, I force myself to be funny and happy and smiley. And it's like, I realized that makes me more upset, you know, behind the scenes or whatever. And I was talking about it with Jen, where I was just like, yeah, I never like feel down because I never let myself feel down, because people I think like have this impression of me like I'm always happy and upbeat and smiling, so I'm like, I don't want to like let down that expectation or for them to think, oh, he doesn't like me or something like that. But I'm like, I'm just having a shit day, I just need to sit quietly and be grumpy. And it's like when I started to kind of be like, all right, I'm just gonna do it, like if I feel grumpy, I'm just gonna feel grumpy and
see what happens.
And it's like, all right, if people get annoyed with me, I'll deal with that after. And it just changed how I felt, because I was like, okay, cool. Like I can, it's okay to be human and be up and down and like,
100%. And the people who are your ones
will get it.
Will allow you to be all different sort of facets of yourself, and don't. I would argue that probably the main reason why your friends love you isn't because you're constantly happy. I mean, it might be a part, they'll be like, he's a really positive person, but actually it'll be all the other things that you do and everything that you are, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
And I think we really build up like in our heads kind of constructions about how we have to be. And, in a way it's like we were on a trip to LA and, he felt like this pressure that was put on himself by himself about like enjoying every day and being like out and about. And then it's like, he came out kind of as if it was a big like confession of like, I just really have to tell you that like, I don't feel so happy and I feel a bit down today and I just want to have like a calm day and I don't think I want to do anything. And like I recognize that it was a big thing for him to tell me, but I was like, I don't care, like okay, like we can just go to the beach and sit down and like that's fine, like and just like you're allowed to have one of those days. And like I do care.
No, but you don't care that we'd change our plans.
But
like I don't. Like, okay, if you're not feeling it, then we don't have to do it. Like, it's really not that big of a deal.
I mean, I was 29, 30.
Yeah.
It was like, I was, maybe, well, I don't know if it was, but it's like, that's the first time I'd said to someone like I don't feel good and I don't want to be happy and smiley and like, I just stick it to the back of my head, make jokes all day, and then go home and be grumpy at night. I never said that. Like,
and it's like kind of, you have to like be alone, like in order to feel something, or to you need to isolate yourself and be like.
I still have bits of that now. Like, we always laugh about it. It's like I don't watch emotional movies with her because I can't. Like, and she finds it funny that like. I like, or not funny, but like she's surprised that I like cry at like sports movies and stuff.
Are you two together?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I was just
putting the clues together.
I was putting all of the sort of joining the dots, and I just suddenly went, oh, yeah.
We're on a business trip to LA, and I So when it comes to like movies and stuff, like even now, like I struggle to like watch like a sports movie or like something inspirational or like a sad movie because I'm like I struggle to like let my emotions out if you're here. It's not because I don't want to. I just struggle to let them out if you're here, and then it feels weird. Whereas if I'm by myself, I'll just be like, they came together to win the championship. Like, it's so beautiful. You know what I mean? Like
the wounded animal that sort of takes itself away from the pack.
Yeah.
I totally.
Yeah.
You're so British.
Yeah, that's my British side.
Yeah.
British. What's your heritage? Like, where did you?
I'm Canadian.
Okay.
Montreal.
Yeah, Montreal.
You can't say Canadian. You have to say Quebec.
I'm Québécois.
It's a different people.
So French Canadian.
Yeah.
Half Chinese.
Français aussi.
Ouais.
Oh.
But shit, I feel like I had a point about what you were about to say, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's just like sometimes, you kind of build something up so much in your head that's like such a big part of like you have to hide it from people, and then actually it's really not that big of a, or not, it's not that big of a deal, but
to the other person it's not going to be a big deal if you let that out.
Yeah, exactly. But I have a question for you. If
go.
Okay. It's not necessarily like, it's not off topic, but
no, I mean we can go through whatever.
Yeah, I think, okay, because you work like specifically in performing arts, and I think like, majority of the audience is probably also related to performing arts in some way or a practice. But I think it's like a lot of the challenges that come from working in the industry or getting into the industry is like, it's very kind of demanding. It's very competitive. It's very precarious, like financially, but also you have to face rejection a lot. You have to kind of always be looking for the next, like even if you land a job, you have to be looking for the next job. Constantly compared to other people. Like, I think, the list of the resilience that people have to build and to kind of be exposed to on the daily is like really challenging, like not only in terms of physically, energetically, mentally. So my question to you is, I've been thinking a lot lately about fitness, and for me, it's not necessarily like, in the sense of like there's a physical, for me, it's like thinking of, okay, being physically fit. What does that mean? Not necessarily being an athlete ready to go to the Olympics, but
being
like
in top shape,
being in good shape and being able to like not say, oh my God, I have to lose 20 pounds and get a 6-pack by summer, but just it being a practice that's part of my life. Yeah. And, I kind of started thinking of this concept of like, how do I become financially fit? How do I become like, fit with my eating, where it's kind of more a habit.
Yeah.
As opposed to just hitting a goal and then being done.
Or deciding like, I have to get there by X date. Yeah. It's more a thing of like, how do you, like you floss,
Yeah, like what's your daily practice?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, and I know that it's gonna be very different from person to person because there's different needs, but I feel like if we compare it to like physical fitness, it's like, okay, you should try to aim to get
your steps in, and
like move a certain amount of
Drink
time
water.
per day, blah blah blah. So in terms of like mental fitness, what do you think there are practices that you feel like are good things to incorporate on the daily if we're talking about self-care, or if we're talking about like ways to check in with yourself, or like maybe just
general day-to-day tips?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is this is my issue with pop mental health.
Yeah.
Because we've got into this place where we think that when someone says, oh, go out in nature or go for a walk, what they're saying is that cures your depression or your PTSD.
Yeah.
That's not what we should be saying. And that's not what they're saying. But unfortunately, the absolute basic of self-care for your mental health is how you sleep, what you eat, drinking water and exercise and moving.
Is that because of like physiological stuff?
Okay,
like it affects your...
so much. Like, food affects your mood. There's like tons of science into that. Like what we affects like our mood. If it's, high sugar, we might be more like agitated or hyper, all of these different things. But also just like running, walking. It's bilateral stimulation of the brain. You are forcing your left part of your brain to correspond with your right part of your brain. You're literally giving your brain a massage by doing that.
Okay.
It's like it's mindful because you're distracted for that moment. You're focusing on putting one step in front of the other and not falling over.
Yeah.
It's obviously, and then we get into endorphins and serotonin and all of those things, which I don't know the science behind, but obviously we know they exist. Your sleep obviously gives, not only your brain is a muscle, like it gives after a really hard workout or a really hard show, your body needs time for your muscles to repair. It's the same with your mind. If you've been exposed to a lot of stress that day, you might need more sleep in order to process that, recover, wake up the next day feeling fresh. So yeah, all of those things are really, really important for your mental health, and they are things that I did not do. I survived with my anxiety disorders, like every morning waking up and having a double espresso and like 4 back-to-back cigarettes. It's my breakfast. The Italian, I'm half Italian, half French, so it's like the Italian French breakfast.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah, best of like so much cheese, just like the most amount of cheese. And that was my breakfast, and I've had to really sit and understand that I have to, I need to eat 3 meals a day, or I need to graze, I need to do those things. And when I feel my panic coming on, my first questions that I ask myself is, have you drunk water? When was the last time you stepped away from your screen? Have you eaten lunch? But we don't ask ourselves those questions because we're so caught up in saying a walk or a food isn't going to help my mental health. Because people are assuming that means it's going to cure their depression.
Right.
But it's not, but it's the day-to-day stuff. So I would start with the basics. The other things are like having a moment of like 5 minutes of self-reflection of that day, being able, whether it's traveling out from work, having like traveling in or out of work, just going, where am I at today? We very rarely have those conversations with ourselves. We're constantly like the next thing, but actually checking in and seeing how we are. I think it's rare that we actually do that. I think that's really important. And then the last one is we're not like camels. We can't like store rest, like they store water. Like you can't just burn yourself out and then book a holiday and then assume that holiday is going to fix like 6 months of overworking. It's about those small moments where you do things for you, where you actually find, what do I enjoy? Do you know how I ask people all the time, what do you actually enjoy? And people like actually don't know. Especially
I feel attacked.
You feel attacked? Because especially in our industry, because their hobby becomes their job. And then like, what actually do you love doing? It's like the hardest question. Like, what do I actually love doing? And it's about being really honest and exploring what that is for you. That is it, like for me, going on the tube less is nothing to do with my panic disorder. It's an active choice because I get to do something wonderful instead, like walk outside. I will always try and walk or cycle. All these things. It's those small moments where you go, what am I actually doing for me? That's no one else's, that is just mine, that makes me feel really good. So yeah, that would be my...
That's a good tip.
And building it into your routine, as you say, that's so key.
Yeah,
because it's like, I mean, that makes so much sense. And it's like, again, I feel like because mental health is like more invisible, sometimes it feels really abstract. But it's like saying, if you go to the gym once, like one workout won't cure your diabetes. And it's like, sure, but if you kind of work out 3 times a week and drink loads of water and all of that, it
helps a lot.
It might also like not cure it, but it might help like with a lot of, it might help reduce it to a certain level. So it's like, it's not necessarily a thing about like an on or off, like you have it or you don't. But it's like diminishing maybe how strongly it comes on, how strongly you feel it, how difficult it is to cope. And even about like, just to go back on the topic of like anxiety and all of that, because, I feel like there's so much talk around it, and I think it's like it's very present in the like zeitgeist and the conversation. And you know, I read something that was like anxiety is like your kind of perceived ability to cope with a situation. So it's like you feel anxious when you feel like you're not going to be able to cope with something that's coming. So, you know, I think it's like, again, you know, having those moments that are just for you or whatever might help, like not necessarily feel the stress that's coming on, but like, you know, have moments to like reflect on something that's coming and like help,
like make it logical and like think it through.
Well, also when you have those moments to yourself, you're actually working on your relationship. You're taking yourself out for a date. And what does that do in a relationship? It builds trust.
Yeah.
And it builds connection. And so in those moments where it's exactly right. So anxiety is you're overestimating the threat and underestimating your ability to cope with it.
Right.
And you're building that trust in yourself. You're like, I know myself and I know I can do it. And I also think there's an issue where we're labeling anxiety as bad. And it's not. Like it's the most one of the most primitive parts of our brain. It's in our amygdala, and it's fight, flight, freeze, and it's there to keep us safe.
Yeah.
And actually, the right level of anxiety helps us perform better. Like I'm sure as performers, like when you get that buzz, and it's like just at the right level, and you actually do the best routine that you've like ever done before. Like we've all had those moments. Like that's anxiety working for us. And so. Yeah, I think, and going back to a point that you said before about those, like the daily things, is that if we're comparing it to physical health, why do people with cancer also go on health kicks? They know that the green juice isn't necessarily going to cure their cancer, right? They're having chemo. But they do it because they want their body to be in the best position to be able to fight.
To do it, right. And
so looking after yourself day to day by doing all of the really boring things like eating and sleeping, and saying no and all of that is not going to cure depression or bipolar, but it's going to create a healthy environment for your mind to be able to cope.
That's a good way of saying it, yeah. What's up, everyone? We're going to take a quick break because this podcast has been supported by Breaking Convention, and we want to give you a few little bits of updates about the upcoming festival. So first of all, for the first time ever, Kingdoms League and Breaking Convention are hosting a battle that will be taking place on Friday the 2nd of May at Sadler's Wells Theatre. This will be for the opening night of Breaking Convention, and the battle is Capital versus Kingdom. The battle is going to be from 6:30 to 7:30, and the entry to the battle is included with the Friday tickets. G-Man, Omni, Rory and Lorena are going to battle against Taiwo, Leah, Turf and Bella. The winners of the battle will then face off against each other for a grand prize. Also on the Friday night is Munya Nassenger is performing her piece, and the Ruggeds are performing their piece. So a great night overall on the Friday. In addition to that, on the Friday, we have Rampage Sound, who are going to be DJing after the performances on the Friday night. So Rampage Sound is a legendary sound system collective hailing from London, England, with a trailblazing legacy in music and broadcasting. Renowned for their genre-bending DJ sets and multi-decks mixing, they've shared stages with Kanye West, Jay-Z, Usher, Nas and Wyclef Jean. The other things are the workshops that are going to be happening across the Breaking Convention weekend. So there'll be lots of different ones happening. The Ruggeds are doing a workshop. Brooke is doing a workshop. Mielo from Sons of Wind, Munya Nassenger, and others are doing workshops across the Breaking Convention weekend. So definitely check those out. For the full scope of the workshops at Breaking Convention, there's the link in our description. And for tickets and more information on Breaking Convention, check out the link in our description. Let's get back to the episode. So what I thought was interesting is at Move It, you had like a space where people could go, almost like a first aid tent, but like a place where people could go if they had like mental health, not emergencies, but or emergencies or reasons to come and see you, to talk to you. I think one of my things which I definitely want to have you back on the pod at some point to do the second half of this pod, because we're not going to get through everything. But also I would love to keep connected with you in terms of like the battle scene and the street dance scene, because I think what's really hard is like, you know, when you have a West End show, you have you know, you can have you guys in, there's a perfect place for it. It's like, you know, backstage or this or that.
Yeah.
With our scene, it's very social and grey borders, and there's training sessions that just happen in the studio that everyone organised, and sometimes there's events, and it's just like, it's not really a concrete show that happens every night the same venue.
Yeah.
But for me, that's like a reason why there's so much mental health that slips through the cracks in the like street dance and battle world, because we don't have those institutions to build, you know, other things around, which is the good side of like institutionalizing things. So how do we, big question, how do we like look after like the mental health within the scene, whether that be our own or other people's, in a scene that's like constantly moving and changing, and there isn't really a border or a one place that it exists in? Does that make sense? Like,
makes complete sense. Yeah. But what I do think, there we go. As I said, I don't want to speak to your industry because I don't have that lived experience. Sure. But from what I see on the outside, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the strengths of your industry in relation to mental health is community, and how word can sort of spread through community. Yep. And I do think that in relation to mental health, that could be its sort of superpower, that actually, like, are there ways in which more hubs are set up for people are able to like drop in and chat to someone at these? Is it that, you know, organisers of these events or these classes hit Applause for Thought or any other company up and say, do you want to come down and just have a mental health first aider on site for this event?
Yeah.
Like, that's the sort of thing that if I'm free, I would do pro bono for you. Yeah. Like, I think there's lots of opportunities to like bring in mental health organisations that exist into those spaces. So it feeling, not trying to institutionalise them, but actually working with their strengths.
Got you.
Just being there on the sidelines supporting. Okay. I think spreading like information on training. Right. Like the more mental health first aiders we have out there, the more people that can have those conversations, and the off chances that you might have a mental health first aider at that event or that gig, you know. I think that's really positive. I also think a coming together, like a collective. There is no sort of board, is there? There is no like unifying thing, but actually people have power, and like actually hearing, I don't know who can organise this, maybe you, you're going to have to now. Like, I don't know, is there like a survey, a questionnaire where we can actually hear from the people what it is that they feel that they need? Because that's how I work at Applause for Thought. We're here for all the people in the performing arts, but because my lived experience is in MT, that's where I've begun. But like, I'm not going to step into the sort of commercial hip hop space when it's not my lived experience, but until I hear what people want. And I think people coming together and being really vocal about what those needs are. I mean, what would you want? What do you think is missing in that space?
I think, you know what, this is what I was just thinking. I think one of the things is like for us to be able to like, you know, have either the mental health first aiders or people to talk to. But I think even more than that, it's like, I don't know if it's even more than that. But one thing I think is a big issue is like, there are for sure people within our scene that have mental illness, like definitely like mental health conditions or issues, but there are definitely people that come in and out of the scene that all of us collectively are like, there's something going on there. That's like a mental illness. And then sometimes we get confirmation and we're like, that person's actually been diagnosed with something, but we didn't know, blah, blah, blah. And I think, you know, one of the things, for example, like when I was really young, like my mum would like kind of tell me the signs of like someone who was like drunk. She would be like, you know, they'll have flushed cheeks, like blah blah. Somebody's on drugs will be like this, like, so that I could, if I meet a random guy in the street and he's acting weird, I would be able to like, you know, at like 13 be like, that's a drunk guy, I should probably not, you know. And I think one thing that would be really great for our scene, and maybe this is part 2 of the pod, is like, how can we look at someone and go, that person has something, or like at least our best guess of like, person might be having a bipolar episode, that person might be whatever, autistic. I think I'm a little bit better at that because I worked with autistic people. There's a lot of times where people are like, I don't know about that guy, why is he acting like that? And I'm like, he's autistic for sure. And then when you deal with them and speak to them, it's like, all right, 100%. Like, you know, I'm not diagnosing you, but I'm like, that explains their behavior. It's like they're autistic. But I think sometimes there's people that it's like, also, in a way, it can be scary for us because it's like when you don't know, and this is me included. Like when I don't know what someone is going through, I also don't know what I should be worried about, because this is the thing. It's like if somebody's bipolar and they're, you know, like having an episode or however you would say it, I'm like, should I be worried about my own safety? Should I be worried about there's kids in the space? Is there people that I should we be forcibly removing this person, or is it just going to be a bit loud and shouty for a bit and then they're going to be fine? You know what I mean? And I think this understanding of like mental health, or let's say mental illnesses on the extreme end, is something that's really missing in our community, because it's like, and just to finish what I was saying, it's like I've said this before on the podcast, but I think because we're not institutionalized, right? It's one of the beautiful things about our scene, because any job like that you go to interview for, even maybe things that you go to audition for, they would see these things and it would be like a barrier from doing the work, you know. If like somebody comes across like maybe even just like someone that's just simply autistic and can't deal with certain things, even if you don't know they're autistic, they might not get the audition because it's like, oh well, you were acting a bit weird, or you didn't do this, or you didn't do this. And I think the beautiful thing about us in the battle and street dance community is like, because anyone can just come and enter a space and dance, you get anyone that like maybe has been rejected from jobs from, you can be a part of our scene.
Come as you are.
Come as you are. You might be a little bit different from us, but no, if you can dance and you can get down, we accept you.
Yeah.
But the negative side of that is you also get some potentially dangerous people and potentially like mentally ill people that are accepted, which is A, beautiful, but B, when something happens, which has happened multiple times in my 17 years in the scene, that something's happened, something's kicked off, someone's started a fight or done this or started lashing out or having even like a seizure or something. It's like, how do we deal with any of this? And I think there's like various things to that, but it's like the education on like, oh, that person's bipolar, let's, you know, go and get the mental health first aid, or don't, I don't know, go and approach them or do go and approach them and talk to them. What's the right thing to do? Because I think, again, like in my time, there's been multiple times where all of us, especially the older lot, we've all kind of looked at each other like, this something going on with this guy, right? Like, and we're like, yeah, but everyone's like, what do we do? Like, is it safe? Like, they're like coming to the events and we're like, should we not let them in the events? Should we let them in? Do they need the community to feel good? Should they be not allowed in the community because they might be dangerous? We want to do something. We want to help. We want to protect people. We want to help them. But like, all of us are just lost.
Yeah.
You know?
I completely hear that. I think, well, firstly, this is all covered in mental health first aid. And actually, one of the biggest misconceptions, which is perpetuated by what we see in the media, how people are portrayed to have schizophrenia. You know, think of the straitjackets and we think of all of those sorts of things. Then usually the murderer in it. But actually, statistically, someone who's experiencing mental illness or a psychotic episode is more likely to be harmed than they are to harm. And the sort of the misunderstanding that if someone is sort of, say someone's having a hallucination or a delusion that is making them absolutely petrified, that actually they're more scared of that than they are thinking about harming someone else. And obviously there are exceptions to the rule. And the first port of call, if anyone is, if you feel unsafe in any way, then you'd be calling emergency services, whether that's physical threat or from a mental health perspective. So if I ever thought that someone was at risk to themselves, of harming themselves or others, I'd be straight onto 111 or 999.
Right, okay, because this is something we actually went through with someone in the scene. We were like, we got to a point where we were like, we think he might hurt someone or himself. And all of us were like, who do we call? Like, who? And it's like, if... it was just like, what do we do?
And it's so hard. And a lot of it comes to education that, you know, but even sort of language by like someone who's bipolar or someone who has a diagnosis of bipolar, like all of these little small language things and how we treat people in these instances is like the sort of education that I'm so passionate about, because it must feel really terrifying to know how to deal with it when you've never dealt with it before and haven't been given that education. And I think that, I mean, one of the things that comes to mind is that if someone is coming into that space, like there's no disclosure, right? They're not saying.
And sometimes I don't even know if they know
people as they are, right? Sure. Yeah. So you're seeing someone who's struggling or presenting symptoms, and then sort of acting based on that, which is really tricky. But yeah, I would just say in this instance, like way more education
and the mental health first aid.
Like mental health
I think we need that in like every battle event. To be honest, I think it's like we need that maybe more than the West End. Do you know what I mean?
And actually, speaking to that point, is that we work with a lot of really, really big musicals that have the budget for us, but we also have a Robin Hood structure, so we charge them sort of absolute market rate for the work that we do, and then we work, like we did a small two-hander play like up in Liverpool that was a fraction of the budget. And we were only able to do that because we charge other companies sort of that. So, but yeah, it's the smaller companies that need it as well.
And yeah, okay, just thinking what's the best thing to go to next. No, but I think that's really interesting. And like, I think that's, you know, that's the hardest thing, is to like figure out what to do. I think a lot of the times, you know, I think with, it's one thing with ourselves, but it's like also things that are like bigger effects in the community, is like things that we would want to start. And then maybe that's, again, speaking to like the luxury of like, we put ourselves last or whatever. But yeah, so with, God, what should I ask you next? I've only got like one or two questions left. Have you got any that you want to get?
No, you go.
Okay.
Or actually, I did have one.
Go on.
But it goes in a different direction.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like, what's the best like last, if we've got, let's say, two more.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of like, I feel like what you described going through personally, but also I think what a lot of people go through in performing arts, like sounds a little bit like a burnout in some way. I mean, there might have been other things in that, but I think it's like the thing of pushing yourself. So, and it might be, again, different from person to person, but what are like some of the not signs, but it's like you said, looking back, there were a bunch of red flags. And so it's like for the people listening, that it's like, you know, I think part of the culture is also like this resilience of just like pushing through. And like you said, you can't know sometimes that you've crossed a boundary until you've crossed it.
But like, what are the like red flags that we can look out for? Yeah,
exactly. To like avoid getting to that stage where you kind of really put yourself in a hole that is going to take months to come out of.
Yeah. So some of the sort of early signs for me, looking back, was sort of an inability to switch off from work. And I know that everyone's suddenly going to be like, oh, no, I feel seen. And to a certain degree, when you've got a high-powered job or you're passionate about your job, that's going to happen. But not being able to shift. Like now, I can have a super stressful day at work at my company that deals in mental health. The stakes are high.
Yeah.
But I can close my laptop. And I won't be thinking about it all night. And I can play Mario Kart with my fiance, and I can have dinner, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I can switch off from it. But there was a place where, you know, I was taking every ounce of my work home. It was disrupting my sleep. It was consuming my waking minute. I wasn't able to be present at social activities because that's all I was thinking about. That can be a really important sign. The biggest ones for me that went completely unnoticed, and I was just banging on my GP's door saying it's my physical health, was all of the physical signs. Started getting more injuries, going over on my ankles, getting ill, like getting colds way more. Like I normally get like a couple of colds a year, right? And that's about it. But getting ill all the time, developing IBS, my bowels literally lost full control.
Yeah.
Well, this is sort of later down the line, but I developed alopecia areata. I was completely bald here. My hair started falling out in patches. I mean, all of these physical signs, but I still didn't sort of correlate that 100% to stress, if you could even believe it.
Yeah.
Because they're physical. So I was like, there's got to be something physically wrong with me. Is it my iron?
Yeah.
Am I anemic? You know, or I can't believe I've got this bad luck getting injured all the time.
I have to say, I have a thing, like, I know it's not true, but in the back of my head, I am like, I don't fully believe that stress causes physical stuff, although I know it's true. No, but I'm not, but like, this is where it's like, I would not attribute it to that, because I'd be like, it's not the stress, it's something else. You know what I mean? Like, I have that thing where I'm like, as much as I hear it, as much as I'm told it by doctors or whatever, I'm like, no, that didn't come from stress. It came from something else. You know what I mean?
That was me, because I was like, my mind is unbreakable. Yeah. Like my body, like there's no way. But I mean, stress kills people. It heart attacks. I mean, strokes.
Yeah.
But even like your immune system.
Like just cortisol, basically.
Yeah. And I think it's like goes to so many levels also of like, even kind of if stress impacts your ability or your quality of sleep, then it's like your sleep affects everything physiologically else. Like your ability to recover, your cognitive abilities, your like healing capacities. So I think it's like I think it's a thing of like, I don't know where I read this, but it's like stress is actually the number one cause of like
all the
disease. You know, it's like whether it's like cancer, heart attack, like, you know, that
it affects your body in that
it really wears you down. Like it's a little thing that wears you down.
And even secondary things like, for example, coping mechanisms that come from stress. Some people turn to drugs and alcohol.
That's
for me, it's
what
smoking.
I was going to say also.
Our industry is rife for that.
Yep. I was literally going to bring this up next.
And so, therefore, not only are you having the physical effects of the stress, you've then got the physical effects and the mental health effects of the coping mechanism for that stress, which is then the drugs, the alcohol, etc., etc.
This is something that I also, you know, struggle with is like, not that I struggle with it, but I struggle with the people that have this, is like the drugs and alcohol as coping mechanisms for stress, but also coping mechanisms for mental health issues. Like I have this in my family also of like someone that like self-medicates because of a lifelong issue, we come to find out. But I think this is a lot of people in the dance scene, especially like smoking weed is like a huge thing, but also alcohol. But like there's people that are just high 24/7, and I'm like, I feel like you're medicated. Like not everyone, some people just smoke a lot, but I think there's also a lot of people that I'm like, there's something going on that you feel better when you're high because of it. And it's like, then for me, I'm like, this is the hardest thing to deal with, because I'm like, when that person is acting in a certain way, or you're trying to reason with them, you're like, you're high right now, let alone all the time. And I suspect that there's something else going on there, but how am I to negotiate with you or have this conversation? Do you know what I mean? And I think it's like, I think that's the other thing that we don't have a lot of education around, is like, especially in our side of the scene, is like the drugs and how that affects your mental health. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, of like how drugs and alcohol affect your mental health, because what I worry about is not only the people that are doing it, and this is also for people at home, but it's like the people that we look up to that are doing it. It's like there's a lot of younger people there's a lot of people that I see that are mentors or you know, in charge of companies or whatever, and it's like they're showing up to rehearsals high, or you know, they're walking around smoking in front of kids, and I'm like, I don't want young people to look and go, this is normal, because it's not. And it's like, it's really bad for you. And I'm not saying, you know, people can make all the choices they want of like in their spare time what they do, but there's a difference when it's like all the time, and there's a difference when it's like when you're in front of children. Like even I drink, and rarely, but I drink. I wouldn't drink in front if I was, you know, around a bunch of kids or people that looked up to me. It's like when I'm with my adult friends and we're at a bar or something, cool, but not, you know what I mean? Like I very rarely even drink at events, like because there's like all sorts of people there, younger parents, kids, you know, I'm just like, now's not the time to be like blind drunk, you know?
Gosh. I think we need a whole podcast to talk about drugs and mental health. I think, and I'm passing no judgment on, I think weed is a really controversial topic in general, just in terms of the science behind it on both sides. Yeah. Not that I'm sort of advocating for drug taking, but it's complicated, and I'm sort of here for the nuance of the conversation. It's not binary for me.
Yeah. And some countries it's completely legal. Like Montreal is like.
And so I think that the thing that is concerning about drugs and alcohol from a mental health perspective is that it increases your risk-taking behaviour.
Interesting.
So if someone is feeling really low and they medicate with drugs and alcohol, they might act on an impulsive thought to harm themselves or to end their life. So that would be my biggest sort of concern. But when we're looking at like addiction, addiction, it's obviously extremely complex, and it's so hard for the people supporting, so hard to have those conversations. But I think that what's really important is what sort of, when we look at how we approach self-harm or eating disorders or sort of drugs and alcohol abuse, is that as a human, your want is to stop them from doing that thing.
Sure.
That's your aim in that conversation.
Yeah.
That like, I just want you to stop doing this thing, right? But actually, if we focus on the emotion behind that, and like focus on talking to them about actually how are they feeling, and trying to get them to open up, whether they're high or not. That's probably how I would like approach that conversation, to try and talk to them about the root cause of what might be, rather than sort of, because people will get very defensive about their addiction. If you go straight in at the
like you're an alcoholic,
like you're an alcoholic, the alcoholics don't like that in general,
which is fair,
which is fair enough. And so, you know, focusing on, like for me, I'm I have an ongoing battle with nicotine addiction. I've been a smoker for my whole life. I don't really drink alcohol. If someone said you can never drink again for my life, I'd never be bothered. But cigarettes are my Achilles heel, my vice. Tried to give up last year for 6 months. Now I'm back smoking. I don't know when this pod comes out. Maybe hopefully I'll try to get stopped again. Yeah. You know, but I know that some of the most productive conversations I've had about it is when someone talks to me about why I'm reaching for a cigarette in that stressful moment, rather than receiving judgment about reaching for a cigarette. Yeah. And so I can only sort of compare the two things.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's what we need to be doing is, again, the education that there are other ways to, other coping mechanisms out there. To some people, because of then that's why we can't ignore or talk about socioeconomic backgrounds.
Yeah, 100%.
Like some people, that's the only coping mechanism they've been taught.
Yep.
That's the only coping mechanism that they can afford. That's the only coping mechanism that they think they can afford, because obviously it's expensive in itself. But yeah, there's so many. Yeah, they're people I'd really like to reach. In the world.
Yeah, and I guess also it's like the work environment as well, of like, I think for some reason,
late nights.
Well, yeah, but also I think like, I mean, this is maybe not like your area of like expertise, but just to say it as well, is like there's like a social understanding about drinking, because drinking has been common for longer, let's say. So it's like we kind of know, like, all right, drinking is like a adult social activity. You don't drink at work, for example, or you don't show up to a rehearsal with beer or something. But like weed, I feel like it's because it's newer, people are like, it's should people be doing this? And it's like, let's say dancers that will like show up to rehearsal smelling of weed, and I'm like, but this is the same as if you showed up drunk, like for me. And it's like, I think people view it differently, but for me it's like, all right, I'm with you that it's like there's nuance to the conversation. I don't necessarily think weed is bad, but I'm like, it is still a recreational drug in the same that like alcohol is. So it's like, if don't go to the bar before you come to rehearsal if you're working with me. Also, don't,
you won't be able to drive a car with it.
Yeah.
And like, you know, that person might be lifting someone.
Yeah, exactly.
And it obviously alters the way you think.
I've had people that like came to rehearsal for me in a way of like trying out stuff, stinking of weed like 3 weeks in a row, and forgot everything from the week before. And I'm like, I can't have you back here, because it's like, not only are you forgetting everything, but you're also, I'm attributing to that the fact that you show up smelling of weed every time. And it's like being high, or like, it's like being drunk and being like, oh, I can't remember, what did we do last week? And I'm like, you're drunk, go, like,
but here's
you know what I mean?
The issue is that you're only seeing someone for that snapshot, but then who do you signpost them to? Because you're not in an institution.
Yeah.
And so like that person is going through that isolated incident, and then like there's no, again, the follow-up thing.
Yeah, 100%.
It's so hard. Like,
and then you
can't be responsible. You can't be having follow-up conversations with every single dancer that you come across.
Of course.
Like, it's impossible.
And also to differentiate between, are you high because, and this is where I'm like, I don't know whether to feel disrespected or not. Like, are you high because you're self-medicating because you have something and that's more understandable? Or are you just like to get high sometimes, you just chose to do it before my rehearsal, which is, then I feel disrespected. You know what I mean? And one side I'm a bit more understanding, but I don't know the difference. So I'm like, I'm in this like middle state.
And also it's like, I don't know, like it's such a difficult position also, because it's like, also, you don't know what that person is going through in their life.
Yeah,
like there might be a crisis or whatever, that they're like, the only way that I can be here right now and do this is that, you know? So, yeah, I'm like, it would be great, you know, maybe this is like a future capsule project, but it's like, you know, I feel like a great thing would just be like to have a bunch of people in the community that are like mental health first aiders.
Can we talk about that? Like so just as a last kind of thing, how do people get certified for the mental health thing? I don't know how much details you can give on like how much it costs or anything like that.
It's all available.
Okay,
available
cool.
Via our website. So we do private courses. So what maybe we could explore doing is putting on like a capsule course.
Oh, I'd love that.
And then like people can, so then you're actually creating a course of everyone from the same industry on that course. So we do private courses, but we also do every other month. There's our public courses. You can go onto our website and book them right now. So we offer them at a 40% discount to what their retail costs. So it's really expensive to train. It's across 2 weeks. It's on 14 hours of training. And it's £325 to train as a mental health first aider with Mental Health First Aid England. But we facilitate it at £195 plus VAT. But on top of that, we also offer scholarships, which are not means tested. You don't have to prove anything. It's all on good faith. You email in and you say, hey, I can afford to pay 100 quid. Have you got any spots for me? I can afford to pay 50 quid. Have you got any spots for me? I can't afford to pay anything. Have you got any spots for me? And the lowest, we do full scholarships. So people only have to pay £35 for their books.
Right.
So like that's the level of which we can offer spaces.
And
so anyone could go on our website now and just book on to.
Yeah, but it would be great to organise a private course and to like there's certain people that in this scene that like, let's say that we know run consistent events, like even all the people at Kingdoms League or like, you know, people that are running consistent events. It would be great to just get all of us and be like, let's all do it. So at least.
And I can train you.
There you go. Yeah. So you said it's across 2 weeks.
It's across 2 weeks.
How does that show up, like 14 hours across?
So it's 4 mornings. So it's like take 10 till 1:30 on a Monday, Friday for 2 weeks.
In person?
Online.
Okay.
But we can also deliver it in person, but the public courses are all online because we have people join from
that makes it easier.
So it depends. When it's taught in person, it's across 2 full days, which is obviously much harder for people to like.
I don't know if you just book out those 2 days. I mean, we can explore it, but yeah.
Yeah, so there's lots of ways in which we can sort of make it work.
What does it kind of empower you to be able to do? Like recognize things, help in the moment, like...
Exactly. So be able to hold a conversation around mental health with more mental health literacy.
Yeah.
So less stigmatizing language. We talk about, as a little snapshot example, we discuss how we don't say committed suicide anymore.
Right.
Because suicide was decriminalised in 1961, so
it's like you're committing
a crime. So we say died by suicide, or
right, just those type of.
For example, took their own life.
Yeah.
So we look at stigmatising language, which is obviously super helpful. You look at self-care. Mm-hmm. It focuses a lot on your own well-being, so it gives people an opportunity and the tools to focus on their own self-care because you cannot help someone else if you're not okay. Talks about the boundaries of conversations, so like, which is obviously very helpful. You spot the signs and symptoms. You learn about anxiety disorders, depression, psychosis, eating disorders, self-harm. It's very light. Very light topics.
Yeah.
And it's not about, again, diagnosing and saying this person has that, but it's about being able to spot the signs and symptoms so you can have a proactive conversation.
Yeah.
You also do loads of mental health practice conversations. So you actually get put into groups and actually practice going through this sort of action plan, which takes you step by step on how to have a conversation.
So if we feel like there's someone in the space that's like maybe at risk or
you
putting
have
others
examples,
at risk.
so I basically will give you these set example scenarios and you'll role play basically.
Okay.
So you actually get to put it into practice how you would hold those conversations. So it's got loads of different learnings. You draw things, you watch videos.
Amazing.
You write things. There's so much self-reflection. There's lots of like practical things. So it's pretty good at like ticking the boxes for lots of different learners.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I definitely want to talk more about this because I think this and like safeguarding practices are like things that we just don't have in our scene.
Yeah.
Like I think those are the two things that like people are always like, oh, what should we do? Especially about like stuff with like young kids and stuff like that. And I'm like, we need a safeguarding lead. No one in your organization is a safeguarding lead.
Oh, we need to talk about that 100%. That's
yeah. This is like part 2.
We'll do that. That's part 2.
But it's like I think it's somewhat easy, but like, you know, people just need to be trained on it.
Also, with the mental health first aider, you get an app. So there's an app that comes with it from Mental Health First Aid England, and you literally, if someone is struggling with whatever, you literally type in the postcode and what they're experiencing, and all of these resources will come up with local community groups.
Oh wow!
Like stuff by the NHS. Like it's really good.
Yeah, we need to sort this out. All right, I think because guys, Raff has to go, but we definitely need to do a part 2. Whenever you're free, please come back. We'll organise it afterwards.
See if they enjoy it first.
I don't care if they enjoy it. We're doing a part 2.
It's not about them.
Yeah, it's for us. Yeah, we're doing a part 2. And yeah, we'll definitely talk about the course and stuff. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. I feel like we barely even touched the surface of what we could speak about.
That's mental health. Thank you so much for having me.
No, of course. And so obviously check out Raff online. We'll leave all your links in the description. And if there's any resources or links that you want to give me that I can leave in the description.
Oh my God. Well, the thing that people can get now is we have a free monthly space called Applause for the In-Between Bit. It's led by a coach. If you're in between gigs, you come to it, you find community, talk about different subject matters like self-worth, self-identity. It's free.
Yeah.
You just book and come to that.
So yeah, check out Raff on Instagram. Check out Applause for Thought and all the wonderful work they do. If you're here for Raff, check out the capsule. And yeah, just thanks again for being here. Hopefully people enjoyed. Also, because in my mind, we're definitely doing a part 2 as long as you're happy to come back. If anyone wants to leave in the comments or in the, write to the Capsule on Instagram if there's anything that you would want us to cover that we didn't cover maybe, and we can kind of talk about it. But before you come back, I'm going to also talk to some more people and see if there's I can collect some thoughts of things that we can talk about. But I feel like it's such a shame to end now because I have another 2 hours of chat in me. But thanks for coming, and see you again next time.
Thank you so much.
Peace, guys.
Okay, bye.